My son, the man for whom I sold my home and paid off over $600,000 of his debt, looked me in the eye and told me that my love was holding him back. He said it with a smile, a glass of champagne in his hand, standing in the living room of a house that my money had paid for. My entire life, my husband's legacy, every sacrifice we ever made had been liquidated and poured into the black hole of his ambition. And after all of it, after I had saved him from complete and utter ruin, he stood there on the precipice of his first real success and told me that I, the foundation he stood upon, was an anchor around his neck. "Once this new deal closes, Mom," he said, his voice smooth with a pity I didn't yet understand, "I'll finally be free. Free. Free from me, the woman who had given him everything, twice. This is my garden now. My sanctuary. I call it the Phoenix Garden. A bit dramatic, I suppose. But I earned it. Every flower, every stone, every leaf here was bought and paid for with the ashes of my old life. I spend my days creating, nurturing, bringing forth life from the dirt. It's real. It's honest. For a long time, my life was built on a lie. A lie, I told myself, that my son was a good man who just had bad luck. My name is Margaret. I am 72 years old, and I am a survivor of the cruelest kind of bankruptcy. Not a financial one, but an emotional one. A bankruptcy of the soul, declared by my own child. He thought my love was a blank check. He thought my sacrifice had no limit. He thought I was a foolish old woman he could drain dry and then discard. He fatally miscalculated. He forgot that the same woman who had the strength to give everything away also had the strength to take it all back. To understand the day, I sold the houses right out from under him. You must first understand the years I spent letting him bleed me dry. My husband, Frank, and I, we were builders. Not with cranes and steel, but with calloused hands and long hours. He was a master carpenter, and I was a bookkeeper for a small local firm. We didn't believe in debt. We believed in saving, in measuring twice and cutting once. We built our life slowly, carefully, board by board. We had one child, our David, and oh, we adored him. He was the center of our universe. Frank used to say David had starlight in his eyes. He was charming, quick-witted, and filled with dreams that were so much bigger than our small, practical world. We encouraged it. We wanted him to reach for the stars, to have a life where he didn't have to count every penny the way we did. We gave him the confidence we never had. Perhaps we gave him too much. When Frank passed from a sudden heart attack, the world stopped. David was in his 20s then, just out of college. In the quiet, aching grief of our home, David became my sole purpose. Every bit of love and hope I had, I poured into him. Frank's last words to me were, "Take care of our boy." I treated it as a sacred vow. David was not a builder like his father. He was a salesman. He sold ideas. Big, glittering, intoxicating ideas. His first major venture was a revolutionary software startup with some friends. He had charts, projections, a vocabulary full of words like synergy and disruption. He was so convincing. He made it sound like he was on the cusp of inventing the future. I invested a small portion of Frank's life insurance payout. My first mistake. For a year, it was a wild success. He drove a fancy car, wore expensive watches. He'd take me out to dinners I couldn't pronounce, laughing about how I wouldn't have to worry about money ever again. I was so proud, my heart ached with it. Then came the fall. The first one. A phone call in the middle of the night. His voice wasn't confident anymore. It was a panicked, broken whisper. "Mom, it's all gone. Everything. A competitor stole our code. We're ruined." He wept, a full-grown man, sobbing on the phone. And then came the manipulation. It was so subtle, so masterfully woven with guilt. "It's my fault, Mom. I dreamed too big. I should have listened to you and Dad, been more careful. Now I'm going to lose everything. They're going to sue me for the business loans. I'll have to declare bankruptcy. I'll be disgraced. He made his failure feel like my failure. My cautious, practical values were what he should have followed, and by extension, his ruin was a consequence of not listening to me. It was a twisted, brilliant way of making me feel responsible for fixing it. What could I do? I remembered Frank's words. Take care of our boy. I cashed in our retirement stocks, the ones Frank and I had so carefully chosen. I paid off the nearly $100,000 in debt. The relief in David's voice was my reward. You saved me, Mom, he said. I'll pay you back every penny, I swear. This will never happen again. For a few years, it didn't. He got a job, seemed to settle down. I thought he had learned his lesson. I was wrong. He had only learned a different one, that I was his safety net. A safety net with no limit. The inciting incident for the true catastrophe came when he was 35. He had a new dream. Real estate. Not just selling houses, but flipping luxury properties. This is it, Mom, he told me, his eyes gleaming with that old starlight. This isn't like a tech startup. This is real. Bricks and mortar. You can touch it. I found a perfect property. Undervalued. We can turn it into a palace. The profits will be astronomical. It's a sure thing. The problem was, he needed capital. A lot of it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. The banks wouldn't touch him because of his past bankruptcy. He had a great idea, but no foundation. So he came to me. This time, the pitch was even more insidious. It was an act of love, of family. Mom, you're all alone in that big house, he said, his voice full of gentle concern. It's too much for you. The upkeep, the memories. It must be so lonely. I have an idea. A brilliant one. We sell your house. We use the money, plus the rest of your savings, to buy 2 properties, one for me to flip and a beautiful new townhouse for Gavin together. I can take care of you. We'll be a family again. You'll never have to worry about anything. He saw the hesitation in my eyes, the deep, gut-wrenching pain of leaving the home Frank had built for us. So he went for the kill. This isn't just for me, Mom. It's for you, for your legacy. We'll be building this new future together. It's what Dad would have wanted. He would have wanted us to be together, safe. He invoked his dead father. He wrapped the ugliest greed in the beautiful paper of family and care. He made selling my soul sound like a sensible financial plan. And I, a lonely widow who missed her husband and feared for her son, I agreed. I let him do it. I sold my home. The place where I had raised my child, where every corner held a memory of Frank. I watched a lifetime of security turn into a number on a wire transfer. David handled all the paperwork. He bought the 2 houses. And he came to me with the final papers, his face a mask of earnest responsibility. Mom, my lawyer was very clear on this, he said, showing me where to sign. For tax purposes and to protect the assets from any potential liabilities, we need to put the deeds in my name. It protects you, I signed. I signed away the last tangible piece of my life with Frank. I moved into a guest room in a cold, modern townhouse that felt like a stranger's hotel. And I watched my son begin to build his new empire with the rubble of my past. The decade of my servitude, the prelude to my hell, was just beginning. The years that followed were a slow, quiet drowning. It wasn't a sudden, violent act. It was a gradual erosion of my identity, my purpose, my very self, all done with a loving smile and the constant, suffocating language of care and family. The new townhouse was David's world. I was just a tenant in it. My old furniture, the pieces Frank and I had collected over a lifetime, didn't fit the aesthetic. That was the word he used. Aestheticing. Mom, that old armchair is just heavy, he'd say with a pained look. It throws off the whole minimalist vibe. Let's get you something more modern, something lighter. So, piece by piece, my life was replaced. My warm, comfortable home was dismantled and substituted with cold glass tables, sharp-angled sofas, and vast, empty white walls. He called it clean. I called it sterile. It felt like living inside a hospital. My home wasn't just sold. It was being systematically erased from existence, and I was being erased along with it. My role in this new world was quickly defined. I was the unpaid live-in housekeeper and cook. David was consumed by his project, the luxury flip. He'd leave early and come home late, smelling of sawdust and ambition. I'd have a hot dinner waiting for him. "Oh, Mom, you're a lifesaver," he'd say, kissing my cheek before immediately getting on his phone to talk to a contractor or an investor. He ate the food I cooked on plates I was no longer allowed to choose, in a house that no longer felt like mine. I was useful, but I was not seen. His gratitude was a currency he spent sparingly, and always to get something he wanted. The debt started to pile up again, in a new, insidious way. The flip was costing more than he'd projected. There were always unforeseen expenses. "Mom, I'm in a bit of a bind," he'd say over dinner, his face a mask of weary stress. "The Italian marble for the master bath came in over budget. It's an extra $10,000. The whole deal could fall apart if I can't cover it. The investors will pull out." He'd sigh, running a hand through his hair. "I hate to even ask, but that little bit you kept back for your rainy day fund, this is the rainy day, Mom? For both of us. This is our future we're building." Our future. He kept using that word. But it was his future. His palace. I was just the quarry from which he mined the marble. So, I would write the check. 10,000 here. 15,000 for landscaping overages there. 20,000 for a custom cabinetry deposit. Each check was a piece of my independence, my security, signed away. I was pouring water into a bucket with no bottom, all because he told me it was for Koska. The psychological manipulation was relentless. He made me feel like my concerns were a sign of my age, of my small-mindedness. If I questioned an expense, he'd look at me with such pity. "Mom, you have to understand. This is how the big leagues work," he'd explain patiently, as if to a child. "You have to spend money to make money. It's not like the old days of balancing a checkbook. This is about vision. I know it's scary for you, but you just have to trust me." He made my prudence sound like foolishness. He made his recklessness sound like genius. He constantly reinforced the idea that his world was too complex for my simple, outdated mind to grasp. It was a brilliant way to shut me down, to make me doubt my own sound judgment. He was the visionary. I was just the old woman who wrote the checks and worried too much. And he isolated me. My old friends would call. "Margaret, let's go for lunch," they'd say. I'd be about to agree, but David would overhear. "Oh, is that Carol?" He'd say loud enough for her to hear. "Mom can't, Carol. She's got a doctor's appointment today. She gets so tired lately. I have to make sure she rests." He would hang up, turning to me with a concerned look. "Mom, you need to take it easy, running around with your friends all day. It's too much for you. Your health is the most important thing." He used my health, my age, as a weapon to sever my connections to the outside world. He didn't want my friends putting foolish ideas in my head. He didn't want them asking questions about my finances. He needed me completely dependent on him, with his voice as the only one in my ear. Soon the calls from my friends slowed, and then they stopped. They assumed I was too frail, just as he wanted them to. The years passed in this slow, grinding servitude. I was living a ghost's life. I cooked, I cleaned, I wrote checks, and I faded a little more each day. The starlight in his eyes was back, brighter than ever, but I realized it wasn't starlight at all. It was the cold, hard glitter of a diamond. He was becoming hard, polished, and utterly devoid of warmth. The flip was finally finished. The luxury house was a palace, a monument to his vision and my bank account. It sold for a staggering profit. For a brief shining moment, I thought, HOA did it. Now it will be like he promised. He'll pay me back. We'll be a family. It was your yarn. He threw a massive party at the townhouse. All his new wealthy friends were there. They drank expensive champagne and talked about their portfolios. I was in the kitchen, making sure the caterers had everything they needed. David brought one of his new friends over to meet me. "This is my mom, Margaret," he said. "She's been my rock through all of this." The friend, a man in a silk shirt, smiled politely. "It's so wonderful that you're able to live with your son, Margaret. He takes such good care of you." "He takes care of me." The narrative was set. He was the dutiful, successful son. I was the lucky old mother he had graciously taken in. The truth was so perfectly inverted it made me dizzy. Later that evening, after most of the guests had left, David came to me. He was glowing, his face flushed with success and champagne. This was it, I thought. The moment of reckoning. The moment of gratitude. "We did it, Mom," he said, raising his glass. "Yes, we did, David," I said, my heart pounding with hope. "The house. It's beautiful. Now we can finally settle the accounts. You can pay back the loans." He stared at me. His smile didn't falter, but it changed. It became condescending. The starlight went out, replaced by a cold, pitying light. "Mom," he said, his voice soft and gentle, the voice one uses to explain a harsh reality to someone who just can't understand. "There are no accounts to settle. There are no loans. That was an investment. Our investment. You invested in me, in my vision. And it paid off. This lifestyle, this house, our security. This is your return." I couldn't breathe. The room tilted. "David, I sold my home. I gave you my entire life saving. You promised you'd pay me back. I paid you back by giving you a beautiful home to live in, by giving you a life free of worry," he said, his voice still infuriatingly calm. "I took care of everything. I handled the stress, the risk. You just had to sign the checks. You should be happy. You should be proud of me." He was gaslighting me on a scale I couldn't comprehend. He had reframed my utter financial ruin as a successful investment portfolio. He had stolen my life and was now calling it a gift. And then came the final soul-destroying blow. "I need you to understand, Mom," he said, leaning in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I have just landed a huge new development deal. International partners. This is the big one, and I can't be encumbered. I can't have old family entanglements holding me back." He put his hand on my arm. "Your love, your worrying, it's wonderful, but it's holding me back. To really fly, I need to be free. Once this new deal closes, I'll finally be free." He told me my love was a cage. He told me my sacrifice was a burden. He stood on the mountain I had built for him and complained that the path up had been too steep. "I need to ask you something. And please, answer me in the comments. Is there a point where a parent's sacrifice becomes enablement? I gave, and I gave, and I gave, because I thought I was helping him. But was I? Or was I just feeding a monster? Where does a parent's love and duty end? And where does a child's own responsibility for their life begin? By saving him from every failure, did I rob him of his character? Did I create the very monster who then turned and devoured me? I need to know what you think. Was my love a gift, or was it a curse? He wanted to be free. He wanted to fly. He had no idea that I was the one who owned the runway, the plane, and the sky. He thought the papers he'd had me sign were his shield. He never imagined they could become my sword. The next morning, he was about to find out what freedom really costs. That night, I did not sleep. I sat in the guest room of that cold, white house, and I did not weep. The tears were all gone. The hope was gone. The foolish, loving mother was gone. She died in that living room, drowned in a glass of champagne she didn't drink. In her place, something else stirred. It was the bookkeeper. The woman who had spent 40 years of her life making sure every number, every decimal point, every entry in the ledger was correct. My son had cooked the books of our lives. He had marked my sacrifices as his assets and my love as a liability. That night, I decided to conduct a full and final audit. His words, "It's holding me back," were a gift. They were a key that unlocked a door in my mind I had kept sealed for a decade. The door to the truth. And the truth was not that my son had bad luck. The truth was that my son was a predator, a narcissist, a financial vampire. And I had let him drain me, not just of my money, but of my self-respect. The rage that filled me was not hot and explosive. It was cold. It was the icy, clear, methodical anger of a glacier. A force that moves slowly, but grinds mountains into dust. He thought he was free. He thought the deeds in his name were an impenetrable fortress. But he had made one critical, arrogant mistake. He underestimated me. He saw me as a relic from a bygone era, a woman who didn't understand his complex world of finance and law. But I was a bookkeeper. I understand paper trails. I understand fine print. The next morning, while he slept the sound sleep of the morally bankrupt, I began my liberation. It started in his home office, the office I was never supposed to enter. "It's all very sensitive, Mom. Best if you stay out." I walked in. His desk was immaculate, a shrine to his own success. I turned on his computer. It was password protected, of course. He used his birth date, the amateurish mistake of a man who believes he is invincible. I was not looking for his business plans. I was looking for mine. I went straight to the folder labeled Property Documents. And there they were. Scanned copies of every paper I had ever signed. The sale of my home. The purchase agreements for the townhouse and the flip house. And the document he thought was his masterstroke, the one putting the deeds in his name for tax purposes. I had been a fool to sign it, but I was not a fool who forgot what she signed. I had read the fine print that day, my mind clouded by grief and his reassurances. But the bookkeeper in me had registered something. Clause. A single, beautiful, life-saving clause inserted by his own lawyer to protect him from potential creditors. It established something called a resulting trust. It was standard legal boilerplate. It stated that because the properties were purchased entirely with funds verifiably originating from me, and I was residing in one of the properties, he was holding the titles Jin Trustai for me, the true beneficiary. His name was on the deed, but my money was the legal foundation. He was the manager, not the owner. He had built my cage, but his own lawyer had handed me the key. He just never imagined I'd be smart enough to use it. I printed everything. Every bank statement tracing my money to his account. Every purchase agreement. And a close-up of that beautiful, beautiful clause. I made 3 copies. My liberation required allies. My first call was not to a lawyer. It was to my late husband's cousin, a man named George. George was everything David was not. He was a retired police detective, a man with a built-in lie detector and a spine made of pure steel. I hadn't spoken to him much since Frank died. David had always called him that old dinosaur. Dinosaurs, I was beginning to realize, had their uses. I met George at a small diner. I laid out the copies on the table between us. I told him everything. The whole sordid, decade-long story. I didn't cry. I presented it like a case file. Cold, hard fact. When I was finished, George was silent for a full minute, his face grim. "Maggie," he finally said, his voice a low rumble. "Frank would be spinning in his grave. That boy, he's not just a bad son, he's a criminal." "I know, George," I said. "And I need your help to fix it." George's mind, the mind of a detective, saw the path forward immediately. "This isn't a family squabble you solve in court over a few years, Maggie. This is a strategic operation. You hit him fast, you hit him hard, and you hit him where it hurts most, his image and his wallet. His image and his wallet." He made a call to a lawyer he trusted, a bulldog named Alice Chen, who specialized in real estate fraud and asset recovery. We met with her that afternoon. Alice looked at the paperwork, her eyes lighting up with the fire of a born fighter. "A resulting trust," she said with a sharp smile. "He handed you a loaded gun, Mrs. Miller. He just assumed you didn't know how to pull the trigger. He holds the titles, but you hold the power. We don't need a long, drawn-out lawsuit. We need an ex parte emergency injunction." It was a legal blitzkrieg. A plan to go to a judge, without David being present, and present the overwhelming evidence of fraud and my beneficial ownership. The goal was to get an immediate court order that would do two things: freeze all assets and bank accounts associated with his name and the properties, and grant me temporary, sole authority to manage and dispose of said properties. The recovery was no longer just about getting my money back. It was about dismantling his entire empire before he even knew he was under attack. Alice and her team worked through the night, preparing the motion. George used his old contacts to find out everything about David's new international deal, the names of the partners, the schedule for the closing. The closing was in 2 days. We had a deadline. For the next 48 hours, I lived a double life. At home, I was the same quiet, docile mother. I made David his breakfast. I listened to him talk on the phone about his glorious future, about how he was about to be free. I was a spy in my own home, a saboteur hiding in plain sight. He was so blinded by his own brilliance, so convinced of my weakness, that he saw nothing. He was a general celebrating a victory on a battlefield that was about to be nuked. The morning of the closing, Alice called me. "We got it, Margaret," she said, her voice triumphant. "The judge signed the order. It's effective immediately. You are in control." I felt a wave of dizziness, but it wasn't from fear. It was from the sudden, intoxicating rush of power. Power I hadn't felt in a decade. The plan was simple. While David was downtown at the law office, ready to sign the biggest deal of his life, I would be at a real estate office, signing deals of my own. I had already lined up a cash buyer, a developer Alice knew who was willing to pay a fair price for a quick, no-fuss sale on both the townhouse and the luxury flip house. David was about to become truly free. Free of his assets. Free of his home. Free of the mother he had so foolishly discarded. The audit was complete. It was time to execute the final entry in the ledger. A gardener knows that sometimes the only way to save a plant is to perform a radical pruning. You have to cut away the diseased, parasitic branches so the healthy parts can thrive. My son was a disease, and I was about to perform the most necessary cut of my life. The day of his closing was a masterpiece of coordinated demolition. While David was sitting in a high-rise conference room, smiling at his international partners, I was sitting in a low-rise real estate office across town. He was preparing to sign documents that would make him a millionaire. I was signing documents that would make him homeless. I had the court order in hand. It was my weapon and my shield. I signed the sale papers for the luxury flip house first. A clean, simple transaction. A wire transfer was initiated, not to David's frozen account, but to a new trust account set up by my lawyer, in my name only. Next, I signed the papers for the townhouse. The home we shared. The place where I had served my sentence. The agent looked at me, a little pale. "The buyers want to take possession immediately, Mrs. Miller," she said. "As in, today? I understand," I said, my voice steady. "That's perfectly fine." While David was dreaming of his future empire, movers were already on their way to his current one. The final act was the confrontation. It couldn't be a phone call. I owed it to myself, to Frank's memory, to look my son in the eye as the world he built on my back crumbled into dust. George, my rock, my detective, drove me downtown. We waited in the lobby of the law firm where David was signing his deal. He came out of the elevator about an hour later. He wasn't alone. He was with his new partners, laughing, clapping one of them on the back. He was radiant with success. He looked like a king. Then he saw me. His smile froze on his face. He saw me, and then he saw George standing next to me. A flicker of confusion, then annoyance, crossed his face. He excused himself from his partners and strode over to us, his expression thunderous. "Mom, what in the world are you doing here?" he hissed, keeping his voice low. "And what is Hay doing here?" "I told you, I'm in a meeting. You can't just show up like this. You'll embarrass me." "The embarrassment is just beginning, David," I said, my voice as calm and cool as a river stone. I handed him a single sheet of paper. It wasn't the court order. It wasn't the court order. It was a copy of the closing statement for the sale of the townhouse. His home. He stared at it, his brow furrowed in confusion. What is this? This is the address for the townhouse. A sale. This is some kind of mistake. There is no mistake, I said. I sold it this morning. I sold the flip house too. The new owners are probably changing the locks as we speak. He looked from the paper to my face. He still didn't understand. It was like trying to explain color to a man born blind. You can't, he stammered, a pathetic little laugh escaping his lips. You can't sell them. The deeds are in my name. I own them. No, David, I said, and my voice was the sound of a judge's gavel. You hold the titles in trusting. I hold the power. The power you gave me when your own lawyer put a resulting trust clause in the paperwork. The power the court reaffirmed this morning when it granted my emergency injunction. I finally handed him the court order. He snatched it from my hand. His eyes scanned the page, his face draining of all color. He saw the legal language. He saw the judge's signature. He saw the words fraud, undue influence, and frozen assets. The king was naked. The emperor had no clothes. The foundation of his world had just turned to smoke. His partners were watching from a distance, their smiles gone, replaced by looks of concern. David looked at the court order, at me, at his partners. He saw his multi-million-dollar deal, his entire future, evaporating before his very eyes. You can't do this to me, he whispered, his voice cracking. I'm your son. A son does not treat his mother like a bank to be robbed and a servant to be discarded, I said. You told me my love was holding you back. You told me you wanted to be free. Well, congratulations, David. You are now free. Truly, utterly, and completely free. Of everything. He just stood there, clutching the papers, as his partners began to walk away, whispering to each other. He was no longer a visionary. He was a liability. A fraud. His phone buzzed. It was his bank, no doubt, informing him that his accounts were locked. It buzzed again. The law firm, probably, telling him the deal was off. He had nothing. No home. No money. No deal. Nothing but the expensive suit on his back. He looked at me one last time, his eyes filled not with remorse, but with the impotent, baffled rage of a spoiled child whose favorite toy has been taken away. You've destroyed my life, he choked out. No, David, I said, turning to leave. I just stopped paying for it. And George and I walked away, leaving him alone in the marble lobby of his ruined kingdom. The karmic justice was as swift as it was complete. With his assets frozen and his reputation destroyed, he was untouchable. His friends vanished. He had to declare bankruptcy, for real this time. There was no safety net. There was no loving mother to bail him out. He had burned that bridge, then blown it up for good measure. Last I heard, he was living in a cheap motel, trying to find work as a salesman. He who once flipped luxury houses now probably has to worry about making rent. He wanted a life without me in it, and he got it. With the proceeds from the sales, my life began again. I didn't buy a big house. I bought this land, this beautiful piece of earth, and I built my sanctuary from the ground up, with my own hands, just as Frank and I had built our first life. I started a small business from my garden, selling rare roses to collectors. I found my purpose not in a balance sheet, but in the soil. I took the ashes of his betrayal and grew something beautiful. I found my freedom not by discarding my past, but by reclaiming it.